These empires conquered, and these empires fell. Just like we learned from their success stories yesterday, we can learn from their failures today. Every move they made can be scaled down from a rule that reached hundreds of thousands of people across the world to you, in your home, by yourself or with your family, at work or working from home. Here are 15 things you should learn from the greatest empire's mistakes. Number 1. The Ottoman Empire lived in excess. So your lesson here is to live modestly. As successful as you might become, stay grounded and down to earth. Imagine an empire so grand, its sultans lived in palaces adorned with gold, silk, and priceless treasures. Well, this was the Ottoman Empire at its peak. But this opulence came at a cost. The ruling class became engrossed in their luxurious lifestyles and neglected the needs of the people and the health of the state. It's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of material wealth and luxury. The more you make, the more you want. But you need to prioritize what you really need over what you want. You'll save money and reduce the mental clutter that comes with managing a life in excess. Shortcuts are tempting, but the more you make them, the more it becomes okay for you to make bigger shortcuts with greater consequences until you're part of the corruption. Integrity is what builds trust, long-term success, and respect. Number 2. The Roman Empire stretched their resources. So your lesson is to focus on quality over quantity and don't take on too many responsibilities at once. The Roman Empire was vast, spanning continents and encompassing countless cultures. But this rapid expansion came at a big cost. They stretched their resources too thin, making it difficult to manage such a vast territory. Eventually, this overreach contributed to their downfall. It might be tempting for you to say yes to every opportunity that comes your way. Whether it's at work, with family, or in your social circles, we often feel the pressure to take on more than we can handle. But overcommitting leads to burnout and decreased quality in everything we do. So instead, prioritize what truly matters and focus your energy there. You'll find far more satisfaction and success by doing fewer things well rather than spreading yourself too thin. Learn from the Romans. Sometimes less is more. Number 3. The Soviet Union failed to see the value of new ideas, which means that your lesson is to value them even if they're different to your own. Look at them before dismissing them and notice how they're received by other people. The Soviet Union was a superpower that controlled vast territories and held a tight grip on its people through a strict regime. And for decades, it seemed unshakable, and yet, beneath the surface, the power of democratic ideas was steadily growing. People wanted freedom, openness, and change. And it's comfortable to dismiss ideas or stick to what we know. We resist change and cling to the familiar. But ideas have power. They can inspire, transform, and drive progress. By being open to new ideas and valuing different perspectives, we allow ourselves to grow and adapt. Listen to others and be willing to rethink your own views. Sometimes it's the new and different ideas that will lead us to the greatest changes and successes. Number 4. The Roman Empire ignored warning signs. How often have you ignored warning signs about brewing trouble in your work life or relationships? You think it'll all iron itself out and be fine, but you don't actually take any action to fix things. And then your world crumbles. Well, what did you expect? You have to pay attention to feedback and learn to recognize and act on warning signs the moment they crop up. The Roman Empire faced political corruption, economic troubles, and military defeats. These warning signs were evident, yet the leadership often ignored them, believing the empire was invincible. But over time, these unchecked problems accumulated, leading to the eventual collapse of the empire. By paying attention to the feedback and recognizing the early signs of trouble, we can address issues before they become unmanageable. By now, you should know that ignoring the warning signs doesn't make them go away. The only thing that will do that is you, facing them head-on with all systems activated and put to work. Number 5. The Inca Empire gave everyone the same reward. Now, this is perhaps the most well-intentioned mistake on our list and the most highly contested one. The Inca Empire redistributed resources to the population, especially to those who could not work, including the elderly, the disabled, and widows. This system was meant to ensure that every member of the society had what they needed to live. But this also meant that personal wealth accumulation was limited, which stifled individual initiative and innovation. You have to balance helping someone out while creating an environment where initiative and responsibility are encouraged. Successful people who had tough upbringings often want to shield their children from the harsh reality of the world. But, this also takes away some of their motivation and responsibility to make it on their own terms. Number 6. The British Empire didn't value local knowledge. Now, the lesson here is that some people will know more than you, sometimes a lot more than you. And there's no shame in that. In fact, if you're confident enough to admit it, well, you can use their knowledge to your advantage. In Africa, British colonial policies ignored indigenous farming practices that were well adapted to the local environment. Instead, they introduced European farming methods, which were not only unsuitable but also damaged the local ecosystems. Find the people who know more about a subject than you and learn from them, even if it's just a new colleague coming in who seems to be showing you up in front of everyone. Don't deny their skills, use them. Number 7. The Qing Dynasty limited foreign trade. In personal finance, the lesson is clear here. Diversification is not just a strategy, but a necessity. The Qing Dynasty, which ruled China from the mid-17th century to the early 20th century, was initially one of the most powerful and prosperous empires in the world. As the Industrial Revolution transformed economies in Europe and America, the Qing Dynasty chose to isolate themselves by limiting foreign trade and interaction. Just as an empire's economy thrives on different sources of income and innovation, your financial health depends on a mix of investments, income streams, and saving strategies. Invest in different asset classes, stocks, bonds, real estate, and international markets. Don't just stick to one sector or one type of investment. Number 8. The Ming Dynasty isolated themselves. Interaction breeds inspiration. If you want to push yourself forward beyond what you can imagine, then you have to connect with people who think bigger than you do. The Ming Dynasty wanted to preserve traditional values and protect against foreign influences, but it also resulted in China falling behind as European powers advanced in technology and expanded their global influence. By channeling the Ming Dynasty's early spirit of exploration and adventure, rather than their subsequent retreat into isolation, well, you're not just participating in the global economy, you are leading it. Number 9. The Ottoman Empire didn't plan for who would rule next. You need to think about how your legacy and responsibilities will be managed when you're not around anymore. The empire didn't have clear, concise succession laws, which of course led to power struggles among potential heirs. These struggles created instability and weakened the empire's cohesion, with internal and external threats taking them down. Don't just think about the present. Consider the future roles and responsibilities that might need to be filled. If you run a business, identify and mentor potential leaders early on. Create a roadmap for succession that includes defined roles, responsibilities, and the training needed to assume these roles. Draft a will, set up a trust, or have clear instructions and plans in place for your family. Number 10. The Mongol Empire relied only on strong leaders. You need to develop independence. The fear or worry you have about being away from your parents, friends, or partner is holding you back more than you realize. The Mongol Empire, under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his immediate successors, became the largest continuous empire in history. The sheer force of their leadership, strategic brilliance, and military prowess led to rapid expansion and dominance. But this success was heavily reliant on the presence of strong, central leaders. Just as the empire faltered without its strong leaders, those who rely too heavily on others can find themselves struggling when those supports aren't always around. And they won't be because, well, people have their own lives and responsibilities to tend to. Nobody owes you dropping everything to help you out. At some point, you need to be able to help yourself. Number 11. Ancient Egypt focused on projects instead of needs. You have to balance ambition with practicality. Ancient Egypt is renowned for its monumental projects, from towering pyramids to the Great Sphinx and sprawling temples. These big projects used a lot of resources and labor, sometimes at the expense of more practical things like agricultural development and infrastructure maintenance. This imbalance caused economic strain and social unrest. Your grand visions shouldn't overshadow the needs that sustain your daily life. Dreaming big is great, but don't let it compromise the foundation upon which your stability and success are built. Number 12. The Byzantine Empire ignored economic reforms. You need to stay on top of your financial situation no matter how rich or poor you are. The Byzantine Empire was a beacon of wealth and cultural advancement for centuries. But as time went on, they ignored economic reforms and didn't address things like high taxes, inflation, and corruption. It's not enough to set financial plans in motion. You have to keep reviewing and adjusting them. You can't just follow a basic budget. You also have to be proactive, plan for changes, and find out as much information as possible before making important financial decisions. Number 13. The Carthaginian Empire pushed past their limits. You need to learn when to push forward and when to scale back. Hannibal Barca is considered one of the best military commanders. He pushed his forces to their limits and often won, but then he pushed them past their limits and they lost. So where is your limit? Where is your team's limit? It's hard to know because we're all capable of far more than we imagine, but there's a point where it's just not possible anymore. And if you continue to push, you'll break. When you see the first big cracks starting to form, it's time to scale back. If you've taken on too much financially or professionally and it's starting to feel like you've made a mistake, well, you probably have. There's no shame in retreating and regrouping. Take some time off, cancel that expensive holiday and get some more rest. There's no point in keeping up with the Joneses if you can't even keep up with yourself. Number 14. The Greek city-states couldn't form lasting alliances. Intelligence and ambition need connections to thrive. You can't expect to get ahead just because you really want it. You have to be nice to people too. The Greek city-states were fiercely independent, and the more successful they were at this, the more they believed that this was the only way to stay on top. But it also led to infighting and political fragmentation. They couldn't connect to each other any better than they could connect with people outside of their empire. They looked weak and vulnerable, and other bigger empires saw that and exploited it. The ability to collaborate and form alliances should be your greatest strength. Joining forces with others can protect you, and if you're close enough, you'll rise with them. Strong, reliable relationships are integral to your success, so don't discount anyone, no matter how much lower or higher on the ladder they might seem. And number 15, the Persian Empire micromanaged local powers. You need to learn to delegate effectively and trust in your team, your family, and your friends. The Persian Empire was a model of efficiency and governance, managing a vast territory through a system of satrapies, provinces governed by local leaders. But the central authority failed to give enough autonomy and trust to these local governors. Their micromanagement slowed everyone down. If you haven't gotten to a point in your life or work where you trust people enough to do the things that you can do, well, you're doing something wrong. Delegation is as important as capability, and it's a skill you need to work on. Empower other people to make good decisions and have responsibility. It's all a part of the road to success. And for sticking with us until the end, today's bonus is legacies become too comfortable. Now, the mistakes these empires made often came much later in their rule, and while they were different for each empire, one thing remained the same for all of them. They were made by those born into the ruling class, not by those who worked for it. The people who start and grow the empire are vastly different to the ones who inherit them, even if they're from the same bloodline. You have to trust your descendants to make their own decisions, but you also have to be hard on them. Never let them forget how hard you had to work to get to where you are. Remind them that they benefit from the fruits of your labor, and you don't actually owe them anything. They need to work for it too. And there you have it, Aluxer. 15 things you should learn from the greatest empire's mistakes. Are these lessons that you'll live by? And what are the most important lessons that you follow that we haven't spoken about? We'd love to hear all about it in the comments. We'll see you in there. Until next time, my friend, take care.